Meeting still going on.
I'd like to call the December 14th, 2015 budget work session to order, presided over by the Honorable Mayor Robert Odeker. Krista, would you call the roll, please?
Mayor Odeker?
Here.
Councilwoman Gavin?
Here.
Councilman Girl?
Here.
Councilman Hug?
Here.
Councilman McFarland?
Here.
Councilman Morris?
Here.
Councilman Mudrin?
Here.
Councilwoman Coleman?
Here.
Councilman Turk.
Here.
First on the agenda is citizens to be heard on agenda items. We did have a few people sign up this evening. First is Christopher Pedersen.
You didn't bring it?
Statesman IFB Pro Christopher Person 702 Vine Street, Joliet, 65. To this distinguished body of councilmen and councilwomen, I want to address full council, Leo Council, and Chief City Manager James Hock on the direction of our great city of Joliet, City Champions, Crossroads America, and the finalized 2016 budget. I want to see our city finalize the 2016 budget with the correct amendments to it, then in turn have our council vote to fully adopt it properly for all city staff in our great city in the state of Illinois, if I could have council approve for the administration.
Rod Tonelli, Chairman of the City Center Partnership, is next.
This sounds like it.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the City Council. Thanks for taking a few minutes with me. I just wanted to come tonight and briefly speak to you on behalf of the City Center Partnership Board. Our board met at its regular monthly meeting last month, and the board had asked that I come and just express some thoughts and concerns we had relative to the budget process, if you'll entertain that, please. We recognize that you have obviously significant challenges in putting the budget together this year, and we appreciate the hard work you're doing on it. We wanted to make sure that you're aware of some concerns that we have, though. You know, we can all cite examples of cities that have successfully revitalized their downtowns by investing in them, and they've turned them into economic engines that help the entire city grow. We just went through the process of completing the Downtown Economic Development Plan and Strategy, and we worked through the city's Economic Development Committee to prioritize the action items that were outlined in that plan. You know, having just done that, it was our hope that the 2016 budget would provide, at least initially, some funds to start some of those capital projects and some of those planning strategies that we worked on together. Unfortunately, it doesn't appear that the budget does provide any of those funds at this point. In combining that with some of the discussions you've had about the possibility of reducing funds to the partnership, to CED, to the Rialto, to the library, in total it almost represents a sense that if that's what happens, we're disinvesting in downtown, and we have great concern over that. As do the property owners, as do the business owners, and the other stakeholders. The downtown remains the heart of our city. We believe that now is the time to invest in downtown and leverage it as an opportunity to help grow all of the city's resources. Investment in downtown in support of its stakeholders creates tremendous potential for economic growth, and that'll benefit the whole city. We request that you ensure that this budget and future budgets continue to invest in the downtown. Thank you.
Thank you. Any
Ed
comments, questions? Yeah, I've just, for the record, Rod, I know that there's no money in the budget for capital improvements. We have talked about how we are going to see the downtown plan through. I think this council's committed to doing it. There's some ideas on how we're going to do it. But just to clarify the record, when you say divesting or disinvesting in downtown, we just purchased Evergreen Terrace at a cost of $15.5 million. We also made a $10 million commitment to keep the courthouse downtown. So I think, and that's all within the last few months. So I think this council's done more to invest in downtown than any recent council, and I don't think that's going to change going forward.
We look forward to that.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Mayor Mainte?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Tonelli, Rod, I'll respond to you. First of all, I would agree with the mayor's comments, and then I would say, let's put it all on the table. While 40% of all retail taxes come from the mall area, how is the downtown the heart? How is not 59 or 30 and the mall, how is that the heart? Well, we are not divesting by any means. We're looking to bring it in-house with an economic development director who will be proactive and very aggressive. So how is the downtown the heart?
I think it's always been the heart of the community historically. It's where so many of the major institutions and quality of life components of our community are located. It's got the biggest physical footprint of square footage per acre of any place in the city. I think it represents what we worked on with the downtown plan, Councilman Hug. It represents the greatest upside opportunity for how you can leverage all that square footage into economic growth. So,
Okay, thank you.
Ed Rachel?
Mayor, City Council, my name is Ed Rachel. I am the president of the International Alliance of Theatrical Stage Employees, Local 124. We've been actively involved in the Joliet community for over 110 years. I'm also on a position as a board member for the Will Grundy Central Trades and Labor, AFL-CIO. I was here last week, and I listened to all the information given out about the budget. First off, I want to thank you for the job that you do and tell you that I wouldn't want to be in your shoes. You have a tough task ahead of you to balance this budget. Our community is very lucky. We have the finest police, fire, streets, sanitation, and office staff in the state of Illinois. And I know this because I've been an active member of the city of Joliet for over 40 years. And, as most of you know, I'm a retired city employee. When I first came to Joliet, times were tough. The closing of the steel mills and our economic climate made things very bleak, and we survived. In the 70s, we had minor layoffs, no pay raises for several years, and again, we survived. The malls went in out west, the downtown area almost shut down. But that was the trend all over the country, and we survived. We need to have a well-rounded community, which we do. We need to have our citizens want to stay here and have new people want to call Joliet our home. Downtown Joliet has a lot going on. We have the courthouse, the casino, bars, restaurants, education with JJC, USF, and a library, America's favorite pastime, baseball. Culture at the Joliet Museum, and the cornerstone of all of this is the Rialto Square Theater. In the past, we've had major stars like Carol Burnett, Donny Osmond, Wayne Newton, David Copperfield, Jeff Foxworthy, Jerry Steinfeld, and just this past week, Tony Bennett. Adding to the fame of Joliet and the Rialto, just recently, a TV show called Empire was filmed here. They brought in over 500 cast and crew members to do the 3 days of production. These people paid for their own parking, most of them paid for their own lunches, and this was all in downtown Joliet. And then they hired catering, which was local, to feed the rest of the staff and crew that came in to finish up the shooting of this film, which is coming out in February, by the way. Several of the cast and crew stayed at the local hotels, and if you don't know, common practice on the majority of the shows that come into the theater, the people from the production company stay here in town, usually at the casino hotel. 3 years ago, our union partnered with the Rialto to do a technical training program for the stagehands. This training has opened the doors for our professional ability to do our jobs better, not only at the Rialto, but at other venues throughout our area. We now have several members who are nationally certified in the areas of sound, lights, electronics, and rigging. Also, working with the Rialto, we are planning an internship program to encourage local students from our high schools and our universities to become further involved with all the aspects of the arts. In conclusion, I hope you can find a way to keep the magnificent Rialto Square alive and well for years to come. It is the foundation for the growth in the Joliet downtown. And remember, if it's fun, it's in downtown Joliet. Thank you.
Thank you.
Questions?
Thank you.
Are there any other citizens to be heard? Come forward, please.
Name and address, please.
Brian Florzak. I'm from Tin Roof in downtown Joliet. I'm here to speak on behalf of other businesses in downtown Joliet. Thank you for taking your time with me today, Council. Cutting funding for our budgets all the way around the board for downtown affects small business owners like myself who struggle all year just to get by, to keep up with whatever's happening. Taking away funding from other places that will inhibit events to happen downtown, that could maybe stop more shows to happen at the Rialto Theater during the week, affect people like me and the other small amount of businesses right around us. We have less than 10 restaurants in downtown Joliet. We have less than 10 actual retail shops in downtown Joliet. And with the way things are going so far, looking at the budget and the way things are, I see less and less of that. If it takes 5 years to even start an economic redevelopment plan for downtown Joliet, I can't promise that I'm a business that will be able to survive in downtown Joliet because of the way things are currently. So I'm here to just voice for the rest of everybody else that we can find ways to put ourselves together to build up the downtown area. The downtown area should be this livelihood for everybody in town. It shouldn't be the west side of the city only. We have so much culture, so much history in the downtown area, and it just goes unrecognized on a day-to-day basis. I meet people from all around the world every week that come through our downtown area just for traveling the Route 66. We are one of the first and last stops for a lot of these people. They come through our downtown area and they're left with the impressions of what we give them. I wouldn't want to be somebody from outside stopping in downtown Joliet and leaving with a negative impression that it's a dwindling city, it's a dilapidated city, or it's a city that the city doesn't even care about itself. So you guys can all just think about how the budget affects the downtown businesses and the greater good of our future. That would be great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak? Seeing none, next is the discussion on the proposed budget.
Mayor, at the last meeting, it was clear to me in communications that from the council members that you didn't want to see a 5% property tax increase. So what you have before you this evening is a proposed budget that reflects a 1.325 increase in the rate, capturing our new growth, which effectively is a 0% property tax increase to all of the property owners in the city. It also contains a referendum question to increase the real estate transfer tax from $3 per thousand to $5 per thousand, which would increase revenues $1.1 million, and a total use of $6 million out of the general fund balance to create the balanced budget. Now, when department directors submitted their recommended budgets to me, I reviewed them and I cut $6.5 million out of their requests, in effect $3.6 million of the total budget in my recommendations to the city council. Last budget meeting we had, Councilwoman Quillman asked for a breakdown of miscellaneous, which is provided before you, and I'm going to ask Mr. Gadati just to review those for you.
Good evening, members of council and mayor. The total amount in the recommended budget for what we would call miscellaneous expense was $1,098,150. You should have a printout in front of you that breaks that down. Many of these expenses are expenses that we have already committed to through either contracts or prior commitments. I will briefly go over the Expenditures, under the mayor's budget, there was $750. Really a small amount. That was used for bereavement expenses whenever a council member or the member of their family would pass away. This account was used for that, to send condolences. Under the city manager's budget, the Heritage Corridor, $120,000 is based on a contract that we have with them. As we stated in our original budget proposal, there's also $80,000 to ask the federal government to redo our census. There are many tracts that have not been counted when we had the 2010 census. We will recover that money within 1 year based on the budget, but that is a new item. Under the ballpark expense, we have the naming rights, which is contractual with the Joliet Slammers. And we also budget $21,000 for expenses that may come up during the year for repair to the stadium. Under the Community Development Department, we have $18,000 for the enterprise zone, that is contractual. We also have $18,000 for PACE, that is also a contract. And then the $34,000 is for continued community development. The Planning Department has $6,500 for Kendall County Area Transit, that is contractual. Under the Finance Department, we have $307,000 for the Plainfield Public Library. That was a lawsuit that the several citizens who are in both the city of Joliet and Kendall County or Plainfield were paying double taxes for library services. We collect the taxes, but they get those services from the city of Plainfield. That is a settlement of a lawsuit. So that is something that we have to do.
Jim,
Yes.
I just wanted to clarify, it's not the Village of Plainfield, it's the Plainfield Library District.
That's correct.
Just to be clear on that, because you said City of Plainfield, and that's not who sued us.
You're correct. As you know, I've been here, I have to get used to all the political subdivisions, but you are very correct.
Illinois has got 7,000 different taxing bodies. Second place is Minnesota with 3,500. So you have my sympathy.
Right, so that is the Plainfield Public Library District. The $125,000 under information technology is for UPS batteries, emergency repair, offsite storage, copier leases, and PCI compliance. The emergency repair is the only portion of that that is budgeted, and that is if we need to repair our computer system. The $100,000 under applications, IT applications, is for a 3-year agreement with Microsoft Enterprise. That is also a contractual obligation. The $32,000 under the infrastructure is for IT hardware, software, backup tapes, and printers. $3,500 under the police budget. That is for supplies and participation in community events. Some of those events in the past were the Alliance Against Intoxication, and they help fund a homeless luncheon. Under the fire department, the $181,000 is a federal foreign fire pass-through tax. That is that's the amount that we received. That gets passed on to the Federal Foreign Tax Board. Really, that's a zero balance, but we have to have it looked at by our auditors so that money is fed through our budget. And the Public Works Engineering has $6,000 for contingencies.
Mayor.
Yes.
Okay, I went through some of this budget miscellaneous, and some of these figures don't match up. I show more than $1 million. For example, the Finance Department on page 43 shows $372,900, and you're only showing $307. One example. Legal services, $2,487. Miscellaneous salaries on page 2, $2,278,700. $1,058.14. What are these miscellaneous salaries? Page 2 of the budget. That's just name a couple. And tomorrow night, on our agenda for invoices paid, on page 6 of the agenda for tomorrow, we have Crest Hill, City of Crest Hill miscellaneous, $3,476.51. Chicago Office Tech ERP, total of $5,375.77.15. Let me go on. I can go on and on here. Flink Company, total cost miscellaneous, $26,227.74. Menards, $5,808.83. This is just invoices paid. This is that we're going to vote on tomorrow. So what I asked you to do was, you know, this is all fine and dandy, and I went through it, but a lot of it's not matching what you're telling me, and there's some of it left out of the miscellaneous columns. But having said all that, what does the money go for individually? Which I have asked for a monthly basis when we approve our bills to be paid. It's always miscellaneous. It doesn't say what it's for.
On the,
I mean, I'm not a mathematician, but this is just basic math here, because you got finance here, $307,000 for the public, for the Plainfield Library, but I'm showing the finance to be $372,900 on page 43.
Yes, you'd have to add the 307,000 and the 65,900 under the ballpark. That falls under the finance budget also. So you'd have to add those two together to get to the 370,000.
So I'm just supposed to know that. I'm not a mathematician, but ballpark is not under the finance thing. It's just, we're supposed to.
On page.
But this is not, I have to say, in all the years I've been on this council, this is the most difficult budget I've ever had to look at and read. The other ones were very easy. This one I had to go over and over to figure and add, and I'm just not happy with it, I'm sorry. Because these figures don't add up for me.
That's the one we've had in 10 years.
And we're gonna be tomorrow night, I mean, can you explain this stuff for tomorrow night? $3 million, the City of Crest Hill for miscellaneous, November 17th?
that's on the billing?
That's for tomorrow. That's on tomorrow's agenda. I went through the whole 110 pages.
I can take a look at that.
It's page 13, just to let you know.
Okay.
Page 28 is first choice temp service. But what really stood out was the Flink Company on page 31. Total amount miscellaneous checks, $26,227.74. So that's just tomorrow. Out of the 110 pages, I went through every single, and that's just a couple examples. I didn't write down every single one. So when I asked for miscellaneous expense budget, yeah, I could do what you did, which is what I did. That's not what I asked for. I asked for details. To me, this is not detailed.
We can certainly take a look at the expenditures on tomorrow night's agenda. I don't have it in front of me here to be able to reply to. But try and we'll get that detail for you tomorrow evening.
Thank you.
Yes.
Jim or Jim, the Jim brothers. Can we go over the deadline of what needs to be passed in terms of a levy? And also whether or not a budget needs to be approved by the end of the year? Is there a way, if you could explain that process? I understand that we have a timeline that we must meet for the levy aspect of a budget.
Yes.
How about the actual city budget? Is this something that we could hold off until we have more time and can?
Well, your levy ties back to the budget, which is
Correct.
the purpose for the levy. And the deadline is the last Tuesday of the month
For the levy.
for the levy. I mean, that, it has to be at the county on the last Tuesday. So you have to have
Can we look to see
adopted
if
it.
we were to vote for the levy, so we know a base amount of what it is we're gonna have in terms of revenue, and come back in January to finalize the budget? I mean, I think we've all, it's been discussed here. I think in your presentation, when this was first laid out, that it's kind of last minute, I think the word was used, and you understand that we're, you know, there's a time clock there, we need to make decisions. I think you've come out with your recommendation on these, zero property tax increase, capture new growth. Is that possible? Can we legally do that?
Well, let me finish up, and then we'll go back to that question if I can. Again, in the budget, there are a number of uncontrollable increases. They include contributions to the police pension of almost $580,000, the fire pension of $220,000. IMRF is going up 1% or $312,000. We also have a 5% medical increase, which is approximately $1 million. However, the budget does include $54,000 for LED lighting replacement on Essington Road. Also, we're proceeding with Phase 1 engineering of putting through Chicago Street, utilizing our MFT funds. Even though we don't actually own the property right now, we've been in discussions with the county, and they're aware that we are proceeding with that Phase 1 engineering because it's going to take quite some time. Then there's Phase 2 engineering, then there's construction, and it can be 1 year each for each one of those phases. So there's also a proposed closing of one fire station. Although we're maintaining staffing, that will still cut overtime within that department budget of $1,200,000. Budget also includes the hiring of a inspector general position. The person in that position will also be a hearing officer so that our police officers can write more citations under local ordinance, and those can be heard and generate the revenue for the city rather than the state. Again, as Mr. Gadati mentioned, there's $80,000 in here for appealing or having an update on our census to increase our income. We're also looking to create an economic development position funded through the reduction in the contribution to the city, the CED, and also the City Center Partnership Special Service Area. But the position will also work on economic development projects in the downtown, including the expansion of the downtown SSA to include Cass Street and Collins Street to fit in with our strategic plan for an East Side economic development plan. It also contains full and continued funding for the operation of By Park. The one thing that it doesn't include is any request for capital expenditures beyond what we're contractually obligated to provide in this year, and that's things like police cars or fire equipment. And as I've suggested, that we wait until the City of Illinois adopts their budget so that we can see what the effect is on our budget, and then at that time review what capital expenditures we can afford at that time. So getting back to your question about the levy, Councilman McFarland, I think it's prudent to adopt our budget because you can amend the budget during the course of the year anytime that you want. And as we look at our capital needs, once the state adopts their budget, that would be a time that I would recommend, any expenditures, any reductions in the budget in order to afford some of those capital expenses.
Again, I would ask, can we legally delay approving a budget?
No, we can't.
We must approve a budget. You can't approve a levy, you have to do them both
It's in the
together.
city code.
It's actually state statute.
So both have to be done at one time.
It has to be done prior to
The levy or the actual city budget?
levy
I would
and
disagree.
budget. Levy and budget. prior to the end of the, or the start of the fiscal year, or our
And
fiscal
ours
year.
is not until when?
My understanding is that as far as Mr. Hock is correct, the levy has to be approved by the last Tuesday of December, which I think is the 29th. The actual appropriation ordinance, or which is the budget, you have till December 31st.
So both have to be done by the end of the year.
Well, no, the levy has to be done by December 29th, the last Tuesday. But the appropriation ordinance has to be done by the end of the year, December 31st. And I think Mr. Hock, kind of hits the nail on the head. I mean, we can approve, a budget and then amend that budget depending on, what the state decides to do on their end.
Mayor?
So is there a way,
You have the floor. John,
Yeah, no, go ahead.
thanks for clarifying.
Yeah, sure.
Mayor. Tim's got the
Yeah. So, well, I'll come back.
I just had a quick question. This is for Marty. Why is it the state can operate without a budget for 6 months and we cannot?
The state.
We're the state and we're the city.
Direct that attention towards Governor Rauner. I'm sure he's listening.
No, seriously. I
You know,
mean, you don't know? I'm sorry, didn't mean to put you on the spot. I thought you had a legal answer for me. Thanks.
Councilwoman, for the same reason that the federal government can print money and we can't. They govern under a separate set of rules than we do.
We're home rule.
But, right, state is sovereign, we're not.
Had to ask because people have been asking me that.
No, it's a fair question, and I'll be frank. For the same
Mayor?
reason the federal government can print money and we can't.
At least I want to say that the state of Illinois is going to suffer the consequences in their bond rating, and we're all going to feel the pain of that because they're going to have to pay higher interest rate on any borrowing they do because they haven't been fiscally responsible and adopted a budget by October 1st.
True. And Mayor, to continue, Councilman McFarland, I think we are going to do what you want us to do as a council. We have to capture or publicly state, if you will, our real estate levy, our intentions on property tax, our intentions on utility tax. We have to let the state and the county know these things prior to the first of the year. And, as I think Marty explained, we have to basically do that with not just a zero budget, saying we want all this money for nothing. We have to tell them what we're proposing we're going to use the money for. And then once we do this by the first of the year, after the first, we can go back and redo, re-examine the budget, like you're saying, and tweak it out. We can do that.
My concern is, I think when you started, Mr. Hock, we kind of went through a expedient budget process, and we did do some amendments. Some things were funded that we approved in the budget that we thought, I think we're going to scale back on. My concern is that we haven't sharpened our pencil enough. There's a lot of new initiatives, a lot of great new initiatives that I don't know that the city can currently afford. It's almost where I feel that I must support this budget because there's some things I like, there's some things I don't like, and we're at the mercy of funding. For instance, in here, the council voted to increase the ambulance fee. I don't see that increase budgeted in here. I see we've budgeted in here, though, for the real estate transfer tax increase. That's a big if, whether or not the taxpayers vote to support some type of transfer tax, real estate transfer tax increase. So I'm just not comfortable because I feel that there's a lot of things in here that need to be looked at, especially in terms of operations, memberships, our subsidies, travel, things that I feel that across the board need to really be looked at in these hard economic times. And again, we're under the gun in terms of time. So that's the rationale for me bringing this up. Is there more time? Is there an opportunity for you to go back with your staff and look at, I like to see instituted, and I know it's late now, zero budgeting. What do we need right now in terms of personnel? What do we need in benefits? What is our bottom line dollar cost? And then add into the budget the additional costs that are needed to operate. Instead of going to staff and basically say, this is what you had last year, what do you need additionally for this year? I understand the wish list came from staff, and you indicated that you cut $6 million from their wish list. Evidently, it's not enough, in my opinion. I'm one person up here. But I see that there's other areas that we need to go back and honestly look and vet in terms of dollars and cents. I know a lot of it is contractually. I think 85% of our budget is from personnel. That's all I have.
Mayor, I just would like to point out that last year, we used $8.7 million of our fund balance to balance the budget. And I've talked to you about the decrease. I just talked to you about the increases in our pension costs, our health care, and also explained at the last meeting the decreases, the $17 million decrease we've seen since 2007 in our casino and gaming revenues that I don't think is ever coming back. So Councilman McFarland is correct in that we do have to take a hard look at our future sustainability on the long term. But I think we're seeing a decreased use of fund balance to $6 million. And I thought that I did a pretty good job in whittling $6.5 million out of the requests with no increase in personnel in effect, and the decreasing the use of fund balance in this year's budget, keeping in mind that we're not purchasing any capital that we really do need to consider once the state tells us what's going to happen to what we're going to get in terms of revenue when they adopt their budget.
Yes. Just to respond, I believe we're creating 2 new positions that go on to the benefit roles. A deputy city manager, economic development.
Yes.
It's a new position, $140,000 salary, pension benefits, health care costs.
Which is
whatever
not,
that is.
and that's not funded from the general fund.
It's still adding a liability onto the city's budget.
There's no use of fund balance or general fund dollars.
So where could those, if we were not to hire a deputy city manager or a, whatever the position you want to call it,
Yes.
or increasing the part-time front desk person to full-time, where would those dollars then be allocated?
Well, the moving, as far as creation of the full-time position at the front desk, that's decreasing the money that we're spending on part-time personnel and increasing the full-time, so it amounts to $22,500 in total expense for that position.
Plus benefits, correct?
No, that's the, yes, plus the benefits. No, the benefits were already provided. They're already working over a certain number of hours,
So
which
they already give,
qualified them for benefits.
Medical, dental, vision.
By law, we have to provide
Pension.
that over a certain limit.
Okay, so that, where would the 22,000 from that position come from then, if we weren't to fill it?
That is a general fund expenditure.
And how about the deputy city manager, the 140,000 plus benefits? If we weren't to fund that, where would those dollars then be allocated towards? You're saying it's not out of general revenue fund, then which fund's it being funded out of, and where would those dollars go?
Well, I just mentioned it's a reduction and a contribution to the Will County CED, and then taking the money from the downtown special service area to fund that
So if we were to
position.
then not fund that position, and, say for instance, the CD was not gonna receive those dollars,
Okay.
would that money then be earmarked for what else? Could it go towards the engineering of the opening up Chicago Street? Or where will those funds go?
Well, those are MFT funds. If you wanted to decrease the funding of that position, you could, but the special service area funds that are being used have to be expended within that special service area. So you really couldn't use the SSA funds for that position if this person wasn't going to do, or somebody wasn't going to do economic development in the downtown area.
So that money theoretically, if we were to cut it from city center, could go towards maybe like the naming rights reimbursement for the jackhammers, for the ballpark. I'm just trying to think, if we weren't to
Sure.
fund that, there's money available to be spent on other items, correct?
There's still money
in the
available for
SSA.
those other items. Yes.
Okay, that's all.
Yeah, if I can respond, obviously, this isn't my budget, it's the city manager and the finance director's budget. However, I strongly support the 2 new initiatives, Councilman, the Inspector General and the Deputy City Manager, Economic Development Director. I think being stuck in neutral is what got us in this position. Both of those positions should pay for themselves in spades. It is unbelievable to me that the city's never had an economic development director. But we are fortunate in Joliet. We have an advantage that very few cities have. We still have a lot of land that has not been developed, unlike most other cities in the Chicagoland area that are tapped out. And I think it's imperative that we get it right out west and to the south when we develop those areas, along with all the other things we're expecting an economic development director to do, including to help bring in businesses to downtown. But I think in hindsight, looking back at what has happened on the far west side, with the lack of commercial and retail, and basically you have rooftops with nothing else to support it, it's a drain on the city's finances. We have to provide police and fire services to these areas. We get very little minimal tax dollars in return. We collect 14% of a property tax bill to pay for everything we have to provide to community after community out west. So I think it's important that we start thinking differently in Joliet. The Economic Development Director is a big step in that direction. The Inspector General, I think, is a no-brainer. And you failed to mention the personnel that we are cutting. So we're not just adding people, we are cutting other positions. The Inspector General will pay for itself, I think it may already have, in some of the increases we've seen. We knew we had staffing problems. We knew that we suspected we had a number of employees who were not coming to work, who were fit for work, that we were paying to sit at home. And in the case of the fire department, we were also paying time and a half to replace those employees who were not coming to work. I said before, when I first publicly spoke about the Inspector General in the summertime, there were 18 firemen on disability. Within a month, 13 of those 18 came back to work, which is a good thing. It's hard to argue a negative and say exactly how much dollars were saved, but those were 13 positions where we were paying people who were not at work, and every time they were up on a rotation, we were paying someone else 24 hours of time and a half salary to fill that position. It's one department. It's not just a fire issue. I think it's a citywide issue. I've said over and over again, I think we have outstanding employees, but any company or organization our size, you're going to have some people who are trying to game the system. So I think, again, the idea of cutting fraud or waste in city government, which is what the Inspector General's position will do, will easily pay for itself in $120,000. I think, again, we're investing in ourselves, but I think it's the right thing to do on both of those positions, and I think we're going to see a payoff down the road by doing so. Much like the investment that we're making in downtown Joliet. You may not see the dollars immediately, but I think we all believe, as does the City Center Partnership, that the investments we've made in the courthouse or in Chicago Street will reap benefits. And I believe the same with these two positions that we're talking about.
Mayor, just two positions I was talking about is the deputy city manager and then the full-time staff. I guess my only concern now is learning, I mean, we still have a community development director. So theoretically, we're creating a new position, correct? That's going to then, what's going to happen to that existing role?
Well, right now, the,
So I guess that's my concern, is now the time, which was brought to me, till that individual retires or there's restructuring the department, we're basically creating another layer. You follow me? And is now the time?
I understand what you're saying, but I don't think I'd call it another layer. I'd call it a face out in front, representing the city, because a lot of the so-called economic development we've been doing is reactionary. It's, these days, we do have a lot of people knocking on our door. As mentioned earlier in the original budget presentation, we've got approximately 6 to 7 million square feet under construction right now here in Joliet. And so the department has been kept very busy and does not really have the time to go out and venture out there with new ideas or represent the city and try and get others to come into our downtown, to develop plans for development out on the west side, have a comprehensive master plan that needs to be updated. And so I think the person in this position will be more the face of economic development, while the other taking care of business, so to speak, with all of the approval process will still continue within that department. Now, if at some time in the future there's a vacancy, I will take a very close look at potentially restructuring and looking at ways to improve our efficiencies in that area.
Mayor?
Yes.
First, I would say I do agree with Mayor Odekirk. We don't need really to drill any deeper on the Inspector General because it does pay for itself. I will agree, and Jim, I've told you that already, with Councilman McFarland. We're paying we're proposing $145,000, which from my humble research shows averages $120,000 for a economic development director. We also have, as the councilman pointed out, a director of development and planning. Well, that salary is not available to morph into this. So I think that $25,000 is huge. I think the $25,000 to $45,000 by turning a part-time into a full-time position during these hard economic times is huge too. Several people here said that individual is already getting, that position's already getting healthcare benefits under the Obamacare because of the number of hours. Now is the time to cut those hours back. We can't afford to do that on that position at the front desk. You and I talked about that. So with the position of the Deputy City Manager / Economic Development Director, I would be in agreement with Councilman McFarland. $145,000 in this current budget is too much to pay. $120,000 is more realistic. Now, down the road, as you just expressed, if somebody from that department retires, we can consolidate. We can take a very bright individual who may actually assume the role of Economic Development Director / Assistant City Manager to take over that other position at a higher salary. We can't have those two high salaries. We're talking about a director's salary almost for somebody who's underneath the director of the Planning and Development Department. So that's something we need to take a good long look at.
We don't know. This one here.
In regards to the workman's compensation, I know we use Gallagher as our third-party administrator. And regardless of the Inspector General, I think we as a city need to take a harder look at how aggressive on the rehab side we're going to be. Not that anybody's taking advantage of it that I'm speaking of. I'm talking about when the person comes in, how quickly are we getting them in for the next level, whether this is an MRI or the appointment with the orthopedic physician versus letting them stay to try to rehab it at the local or the beginning clinic. I realize protocol calls for them to be there for a week or so, but if we're not getting the improvement, we would like to encourage, not like the professional athletes who do have a sizable amount of money in their budget, but they're in very, very quickly deciding, does this need surgery or doesn't? And I think we could get people back to work, because I think there's a lot of good people out there who want to come back, but there was a delay in the diagnosis of their injury that has kept them off, regardless of that Inspector General position.
Good point.
Mayor, Jim, on page 26, under the subsidies, $1,350,700.
Yes.
That's where the Rialto is, right? The 600,000.
Yes, it is.
What else is comprised in that figure? The rest of it.
Yeah, the museum's in there.
Sales tax, rebates.
Go ahead.
The museum's in there, the Rialto Theater, and there's, I think, 4 separate sales tax rebate agreements that we have with several of our businesses. I will give you a list of that.
Yes.
The detail of who gets what.
Okay. I'd appreciate it. And also, I don't know, I've had a couple calls today as far as the Station 3, closing of Station 3. There's been some adjustments to equipment out of Station 9. This has freed up some money. I don't know if you're aware of it. If you've had any conversations with them, Jim, but I would encourage you to, like close to 60% of that figure of 1.2 they've saved with reducing equipment out at Station 9.
Yes, I have.
Okay. And I think that's it for right now.
Jim, if I could address that. We identified a problem with the overtime in fire during the summertime. And again, if you can outline what steps you took to try to address that and why we're at the point we are today about closing the fire station?
Well, again, I think I explained at an earlier budget meeting that we have contractual agreements with both the firefighters union and the fire command officers union that when a certain piece of equipment is being used, that a command officer has to be in the station. Also, so many officers have to be on a certain piece of equipment. So we've tried to utilize different equipment to be able to reduce the number of firefighters we need at any given time at that station, which has decreased the use of overtime at this point, but nowhere near a reduction of $1.2 million in the budget. So that's why the proposal to close Station 3 was included here.
Chief Formos, has there been any discussion with the fire unions regarding some type of agreement that would allow us to reduce the overtime without closing the fire station?
We've had some dialogue back and forth, but we've had some dialogue with both unions, but at this point, we haven't been able to come up with an agreement.
Well, personally, I would encourage you, if you can't continue to try, I think, we don't want to close the station. I think I'm speaking for the entire council. Hopefully, there could be some middle ground reached that would allow us to control the overtime, but yet still keep the station operable.
Mayor?
Yes.
I had another thought. A little while back, we approved for department heads to write checks up to $20,000. And I think maybe we should rescind that and bring it back down and everything come through us again. It's just so we can keep an eye on things. And not to say that there's any wrongdoing, but that'll give us a better handle on what's being spent out there.
Was that department heads or was that you, Jim Hock?
I think through council resolution, the city manager has authority up to $20,000. I don't think any department head
I know the
has,
department heads as well. They had a certain amount.
and I can check that,
Okay.
yeah.
Jim, I guess I just question that real estate transfer tax, knowing now that it has to go to a referendum.
Yes.
As you know, referendums are very difficult. The Park District was able to pass the one, but it took a great effort from lots of people, and I don't know that anybody's going to rally around paying a tax. I don't know that would ever come to completion here.
I don't disagree with you, and as you know, state law prohibits us as a municipality from expending any city dollars to promote any kind of referendum. All we can do is educate the public, so we can share with them what other communities have as their rate and the need to balance our budget and so on.
Mayor?
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Betty. I've already spoken.
Just to follow up with Councilman Muldren's point about the referendum, what is our contingency plan, or do we have a plan, say that referendum does not pass? And we are now I believe it's 1.6?
1.1 million. yes.
1.1 million? So do we have a contingency plan?
Well, we would have to use fund balance at that point, but hopefully the state will have adopted their budget before then, and we'll know what the effects are as far as the state budget, and have to deal with it at that point in time.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, just to kind of follow up what Councilwoman Gavin had said, my understanding, at least looking through the budget, the increase in the ambulance service call fees, the additional fees there that are basically paid by the insurance companies, is not in the budget, correct?
No, we didn't include an increase at
Do
this
you know
point in
what,
time.
approximately what that number could be?
It could be, the ambulance company, I think, said $700,000 to $800,000,
So,
which I think is very optimistic, and that's why we didn't
Let's
include it
use
in
the
there.
downside, let's say it's 700,000.
Yes.
I'm not real optimistic, as Councilman Mudron isn't as well, that the transfer tax is gonna pass. So at least there's 700,000 of that,
And at that point, we'll have some experience and be able to know what, and take a look and see what kind of revenues we're getting in that first quarter from those increased ambulance fees.
and I think your budget here, should we adopt it by year end, is certainly gonna be evolving, Jim. I mean, it's,
Yes.
you know, it's definitely not a static document, and you're gonna have a lot of homework to do.
It's never a static document.
Right.
It's a
I just have
guideline.
one last question here. With respect to the Rialto and our investment in Rialto, which is an investment in downtown Joliet, has there ever been an economic development study? I think there was, but I don't recall what the value was. But has there ever been an economic development study on the value in dollars that the Rialto brings to the city of Joliet, specifically downtown? I thought the owner of Tin Roof had some excellent comments up here. And I too went to a show on Friday down at the Rialto and stopped into the, I'm sorry, I didn't stop into the Tin Roof. I stopped in the Chicago Street Bar and Grill. But I will tell you, it was jammed. I mean, they were too deep at the bar.
Yeah.
But has there ever been a study? Do we have a study out there? I don't know if you would know of the economic benefit that the
No,
Rialto
I don't
brings to
know
the
that
city
we
of
have,
Joliet?
but I'll check on that and see if we've done one in the past.
Can I comment on this? Yeah, we certainly had one in 2012. It was commissioned by the Rialto, so it would be a favorable study before the Rialto. There's never been an independent study that's ever been brought to me.
Randy Green's president. If you could step forward, please, Randy.
Yes, thank you. The the economic development impact study that was done in conjunction with the City Center Partnership. And it was based upon the fundamental work that was done by the Americans for the Arts, which had established about a $38 per head expenditure over and above the normal ticket price that is being spent by each and every person who bought a ticket. And that was a number that was specifically described for the Chicago metropolitan area. So based upon that information, we developed a formula by applying it to the number of attendees that provided a portion of what was a total estimate of about $7.5 million. In addition to what formula was used by the Americans for the Arts for calculating that, the City Center Partnership looked at the overall activities that were done that would be from dance recitals, general rentals, things that were not necessarily driving a ticket price that would be generating that, and made a conservative estimate of several 100,000 users that would be applied to that, plus just the general operating budget of the Rialto, which a great part of it goes back into the community to caterers, to lodging, to transportation, to general services that are provided to support it. And the estimate was about $7.5 million annually is returned to the community as a result of the Rialto's activities through either additional spending or by the return of the budget back to the community.
Thank you.
Mayor? Yes. Question, Mr. Green. If $7.5 million is accurate and not a well-polished marketing study, why do we only have one restaurant, Chicago Street Bar and Grill, that's been open longer than a year and a half? Why have we lost so many over the last 18 years?
Well, I'm not sure I would have the
I mean, it's an
definitive answer
economic
to
engine,
that. I
right?
think when you look back to over a period of time and you look at the fact that there's an evolution in terms of owners, I think most of those properties have had continuous restaurant activity in there, but by a number of different owners. So I think if you go back to the point in time where there was the original conversion of the space where Barolo's was, Barolo's is now morphed into Tin Roof today. The work that was done, created for the department, is now Joliet's. I think the natural evolution of the restaurant business has carried through and has been sustained over a large period of time by the activity downtown, and has provided some other opportunities now with the Venezuelan Bowl, Blue Taco, some of the others who more recently come into the downtown area.
No, sir, that's not accurate. I've owned businesses over the last 25 years. How many have you owned?
Sir, I don't own a business.
Okay.
I work on behalf of the
With that
authority.
said, I'll continue my statement. I'm done with the polished turd. The bottom line is you come before us, you don't bring any hard numbers except back in 2012, and you tell us you're an economic engine. I'm trying to balance a budget for every member of the city, not the 20,000 that buy tickets in the city, the 150,000 that live here. An economic engine would not have a natural progression of failed businesses. You come here and you tell me we are an economic engine that keeps businesses open, particularly restaurants. That's not true.
No, sir, I don't think I make that statement. I think I make a statement that I bring people through our organization and through our activities downtown for the benefit of those businesses. It's up to those businesses to be able to capitalize on that or to be successful in what we do. We certainly can't control the successes of those organizations. We only provide them opportunities to succeed.
Randy, while you're here,
Oh, I'm sorry.
put you on the spot. Is there a way, in your opinion, that the Rialto could operate and hit their own budget without funding from the city? Is this something that is a goal that could be striven for?
The only thing I could tell you, Mayor, is the fact that when the Rialto was created as one of the Illinois Civic Centers, along with I think, 9 others that were in the state of Illinois at that point in time, Peoria, Springfield, Decatur, and so forth, you look at their operations, they were all created and tied into a specific funding source through taxes, hotel, motel, real estate, liquor tax, whatever. And they all continue today to have those as primary funding sources. The Rialto was created with a dedicated funding source through hotel motel. And at a period of time, that was changed, and it was taken off of the hotel motel tax and was tied into gaming revenue. And then after a while, it was then tied into the general budget as a line item in the city. So originally, it was set up to be funded and helped to be supported by a tax base, a dedicated funding source, as you mentioned before. I think that is necessary for it to be successful because the amount of money that it creates, the need that we have for investment in capital repairs and improvements to maintain the viability of the facility outpaces any ability that it has through ticket sales, leasing, any other general revenues that are created by virtue of its day-to-day activity is just greater than what it's able to be created on an annual basis.
So that takes us to where we left it last week, when I said I think it was imperative for the city or even my office to help you find a dedicated source of funding. Because I do think it's just a matter of time. There's going to be a day where the council says no more. So I think that's a challenge for all of us going forward, but certainly for your organization, I see Mr. Vera here, we have to put our thinking caps on and come up with a solution to this.
I couldn't agree with you more. And the reason why we have to look to the city or need to look to the city for that assistance, because we have no taxing authority, we have no bonding authority. None of that was created and provided to us in the enabling legislation back in the late 70s. So we have always needed to have a partnership, and that's been very generously provided by the city of Joliet since 1979, when they became a partner to make the downtown redevelopment of the Rialto and the adjoining properties a part of an economic development program, for the city. So I would agree with you that, times change, things move along. It's a very fluid situation when it comes to the needs of a city, but when it comes to the needs that we have to be able to operate, we need to look for others to help us enable the opportunity for that to be continued, and we would welcome that opportunity by the city.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor, at this point, do you mind, with all due respect to Mr. Green, I would like to read their letter into the record?
Sure.
Is that okay?
Yep.
Okay. This letter is from the Will County Metropolitan Exposition and Auditorium Authority, otherwise known as WCMEAA. It is to Mayor Bob Oderkirk and members of the Joliet City Council. It is from Randy Green, General Manager, with a carbon copy going to Jim Hawk, City Manager. It is dated December 11th, 2015. It is regarding, or response to Larry Hogg Rialto Funding Solution. I didn't know I was running the Rialto, but I had a solution. Raise ticket prices by $10. Councilman Hogg's Rialto Funding Solution, whereby we simply raise ticket prices by $10, multiplied by average tickets sold of 60 to 65,000, to offset the City of Joliet's annual stipend, is a fallacy that has no substance for success. Mr. Hugg suggested this last year when we appeared before City Council making our request for 2015. At that time, it was explained that it would not provide the revenue Mr. Hugg was calculating. Here is the explanation. At a point in time when a show is confirmed, ticket prices are set at the highest price point possible as determined by recent, quote, 1 to 3 years, local appearances by that artist. Determination of anticipated tickets to be sold, which includes input from community members who participate in the survey, asking specific price point opinions, and lastly, with the approval of the artist. Number 2, what Mr. Hugg is not factoring into his simple math is that a large majority of shows has what is called back-end overages that are payable to the artist. This is calculated by taking a percentage, normally 75 to 90%, of remaining box office revenues after deduction of show expenses and a modest venue profit, and that amount becomes payable to the artist as part of the negotiated compensation package. Number 3, as stated in number 1 above, ticket prices are set at the highest price point possible, and any increase above that price point is likely to result in fewer tickets being purchased because ticket buyers have a sense of what is the correct price. At that point, the law of diminishing returns becomes a factor related to trying to maintain anticipated revenues. Decreased sales then may trigger a discounting strategy that further reduces the value of the ticket. Very simply, Mr. Hugg's solution is an incorrect or misleading notion based on invalid or unsound reasoning. In response to Mr. Hugg's statement questioning what we have done to, quote, tighten our belts, this is how we have maintained our ability to operate with a $600,000 city stipend. In 2009, number 1, in 2009, we eliminated 2 full-time positions. 2, Director of Programming and Director of Leasing, with those duties and responsibilities being absorbed by current staff. We have maintained that level of operations since that time. Number 2, we have reviewed and in most cases reduced operating costs related to property casualty insurance and health insurance, my expertise, workers' compensation insurance, utility efficiencies related to bulk/contract purchases of electricity and natural gas, routine building maintenance efficiencies have been realized due to the improvement of the skill level of our engineering staff, which has resulted in annual savings by not bringing outside vendors to deal what is now routine maintenance functions. Number 3, we have sought and obtained outside funding sources to deal with some capital funding needs. Number 4, we have had to delay most routine capital repairs because we have found it necessary to utilize most, if not all, the city's $600,000 stipend to sustain operation. Funding of capital repairs cannot occur from the operations budget. A second budget specifically for capital repairs needs to be established and funded to permit timely anticipated repairs and unanticipated repairs. Number 5, the reconstituting of the Rialto Square Theater Foundation and their work with the Director of Development will result in general and specific funding goals to address capital repairs and annual operations, continuing their efforts to find community support and resources. The Rialto is operating as efficiently as possible, but it is largely unsustainable because of increasing operating expense that occurs as part of the life of the business. The solutions to funding needs is not as simple as raising tickets $10. It will require a collaborative effort which includes the city of Joliet. Thank you. No signature. With that said, I do have to note, now that I've read it in the public record, that the claims of reduced staffing and costs do not accompany any kind of an audit. It's a 2-page missive. Okay. With that said, with your permission, Mayor, I would ask Randy Green to come up and add to this letter anything he wants at this point. Would you like to add anything additional to this letter? So you're not simply going home tonight? Yeah. Okay. But that won't be a quote to the Herald News tonight. I'm just going home. I don't need a comment. Mr. Green, let me tell you with all due respect, I didn't give specifics because I'm not paid $140,000 a year to run the Rialto. You are. Do you want specifics? It's called not a talent services consideration or contract. It's called a surcharge. Kind of like you've already done marketing-wise. Now, see, I'm thinking for you. With your STARS program, 100 to 1,000, and then 1,500 and 2,500 to be a corporate sponsor. Am I accurate so far? Okay.
Hold on, excuse me, Mayor, can you step up to the mic if you're gonna have a dialogue?
Then you have something called the Sweet Life, correct? Yes, sir. That's above talent services and negotiations. That's a $65 ticket, of which what you just described in your letter, the brunt of which would go to the talent, but the $30 comes right to you. That's for an additional value-added consideration.
That is correct. That's a separate
Find a
service.
$10 value added. Why did you need me to tell you that?
It is additional hospitality service that can be purchased over and above what the regular ticket price is, as a way to generate additional revenue when we had the opportunity to do so through the addition of the hospitality suite.
Right. So to put together a value-added $10 surcharge, optional surcharge, to save the Rialto, because you do claim that everybody loves the Rialto, including the ticket purchasers. Why wouldn't they?
I think I just heard it something that you haven't stated before, an optional service charge. That was never anything that was described as a part of the additional $10.
With all due respect, Mr. Green, because I'm not paid $140,000 to do the details, you are.
No, sir. And I have to look at, how the compensation package is designed in order to be protected from any additional revenue sharing with the artist. There are certain things that we already do by applying
So you needed me to tell you
Larry?
how to get around the ticket.
Let him finish his answer.
Okay. Mayor. Go ahead, sir.
I'm not sure what the actual question is, Councilman. I don't know what question.
So you needed me to tell you how to get around the
Oh, no,
talent
sir,
services?
I don't. I was merely explaining why an additional $10 was not going to be something that was going to provide a cash access to the Rialto because of the nature of the business and how we have to construct it. There are certainly other ways we do it. We could increase the service charges. We could increase the beer. We could increase the value of the Sweet Life hospitality package. These are things we're looking at all the time. There are also certainly there are price points and there are considerations out there that we have to think of that where the customer's not going to see that as a value anymore. These are things that happen every day, and we're certainly not taking this lightly in terms of how do we generate additional revenue. I was merely trying to answer the question because you were putting it forward as a way to be able to offset the $600,000 provided by the city. I was mainly providing the information that it doesn't necessarily get translated into a direct revenue for the Rialto.
With all due respect, Mr. Green, this is the same presentation I received in 2011. So why haven't you solved it since 2011? You said you're looking at all these options to increase revenue attached to each ticket. Not by the ticket itself, but to increase revenue attached, and you haven't found the answer yet.
No, sir, and at some point in time, you don't have anything else that can be offered to that other than creating additional programming, more shows, more ways to drive people into the theater. It's not by how much you can continue to hit the same customer every time, but how many more revenue opportunities can you create through more shows, more rentals, more leasing opportunities, more things that we're able to provide as a source of additional revenues for the theater. It's not necessarily how much more can you continue to add to one individual's charge for walking in the door.
Okay? Okay. In response to that, I would say, I thought the mission was myself, and I'm glad to be the lightning rod and be the Grinch. Taking 600,000 could close the entire Rialto, okay? Now, you're telling me that people certainly who do buy tickets, let alone those who don't buy tickets, love the Rialto. So they would not. The value-added portion of that $10 optional surcharge would be to keep the Rialto open and stop Councilman Hugg from killing it. How is that not a goal in and of itself?
I think it would be an opportunity for our foundation to look how it could raise more money through the community to do what you're describing. But I think to do it as a way to do it as a value added, and I'm not quite sure how you would describe that as it relates to presenting that to any other individuals. But I think it's going to require efforts on a number of different sources, including the foundation, including our operations, including our boards, to be able to figure out a sustainable, ongoing level of support that will allow the Rialto to be a viable asset for the community. It's not going to be one thing that's going to do it. It's going to be a collaborative effort, and it's going to take the efforts of a number of people to figure out how that's going to happen.
Okay, you asked me, Mr. Green, if you don't mind.
Yeah, Councilman Mudger wants to
Sure,
speak.
go ahead.
Larry, I don't think this is the venue to get into a personal attack on Mr. Green. There is a meeting of the Rialto, it's a public meeting, once a month, that's open to everyone to come there. I think you've moved this from a budgeting issue to a personal attack on him, and this is not the venue for it, in my
Okay,
opinion.
with all due respect, Councilman, did you read this letter?
I didn't have to, you read it to me.
Whose was the letter targeted or attacking?
He was, as I
Myself,
read the
right?
headline, wait a minute, I was talking, I thought you asked me a question.
Sure, go ahead.
He was answering your $10. A lady came up after and answered why $10 would not be a bottom line profit for them.
Okay, Mayor, with all due respect, was it not requested by Mr. Green and the Rialto to be read in the public record?
There was a misunderstanding. I was told that Mr. Green said before the meeting that wasn't the case. The letter was written, it's read into the record, we have the discussion now.
Sure. So, Councilman Mudron, with all due respect, this is certainly an attack on my thought process, but at least as flawed as it may be, my thought process, I have a thought process that progresses beyond 2011.
I think it's an answer of your thought process.
No,
not an
it's
attack.
not.
That's your opinion. I got mine.
True.
Haven't said that. Are we done?
If I can continue.
Okay.
Because this letter is directed at me. It wasn't an unnamed council member. It is Mr. Hogg, which I prefer Larry, which is fine.
Well, Mr. Hogg, I just wanted to make sure that I was addressing the right topic based upon what was presented at the last meeting, and that's why I attributed to you, because that was exactly what you were describing as a solution for that. So, you know, there was no intent for any disrespect. I was merely trying to link the topic to what was said at last meeting and provide a basis of information for the mayor and the council to be able to understand how that particular formula was not going to be a viable option for the Rialto to solve a $600,000 replacement.
Okay, and in here, you did thoroughly address, which I already knew, having been in the entertainment industry myself for 20 years, you thoroughly addressed how you can't attach it to the talent services portion of the contract. But you didn't talk about the value-added optional service, did you?
No, I didn't, because that was not how I understood the question and what you were putting forth. You were talking about adding $10 on top of the ticket price. Therefore, that was the description that I provided based upon the description that you gave at the last meeting.
Now I've given you a different explanation.
Thank
Can
I
you
appreciate
make that happen so we can get rid of the 600,000?
I would do whatever I could to be able to make sure that we have an adequate funding source to fund the Rialto. And as I said, it'll be a collaborative effort, and one we'd like to do along with the city of Joliet, along with our foundation, along with the community. That would be my goal. However that formula is constructed, from whatever amount of money is derived from whatever of those sources that might be, the sum total of it is, it supports the Rialto in a way that it can be an effective and quality asset for the community.
I will real quick. All right, Mr. Green, with all due respect, the same suggestion I made tonight, based on your letter, I made in 2011. And we made no
I don't
progress.
recall specifically what you said in
listen to the tape.
2011, and I would be happy to look
were
at
here
that.
to
Do
make
you
your
have that
presentation.
information for me? I'd be happy to take a look at that.
Ask the city clerk to provide you
I will be happy
with
to.
that substance.
We're going to move forward.
Okay, thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Randy. Any other questions for Mr. Green? Jim?
Mayor, we look for your guidance. At this point, if there are no other changes in the budget, then Mr. Gaddadi will prepare the public notice to reflect those numbers that we've presented to you, and then next Monday, we'll have our official public hearing that has to be held before you adopt the budget.
Okay, a couple points. I think we've addressed Councilman McFarland's question. I do think we need to pass a budget this year. I think it's going to be inherent upon this council next year to find ways to grow our local economy. No one wants to raise taxes, starting with me, so we have to be progressive in finding new sources of revenue. Speaking with everyone on this council the last few days, I could tell you that there's some good ideas that are going to be presented. Councilman Girl had a couple good ideas earlier. I don't know if it's a time for today, but going forward. However, I think Councilwoman Coleman raised a couple questions that need to be answered. Some could be answered tomorrow night regarding expenditures, but I do think before we vote on the budget, the issue she raised should be addressed.
Sure, we'll have that information for tomorrow evening.
Mayor,
Yes.
I would like to, Jim, go back. I brought this up, I think Pat and John both mentioned this also, the ambulance fee. Can you guys update to a semi-accurate assumption in your revenues. You go to page 13. Again, you have no increase for ambulance fees of which has been passed, so we know it's a guaranteed increase in funding. But you also have in here an increase in the real estate property transfer tax, which is not a guarantee. I like to see that taken out of the revenue source to give us somewhat of a true picture of what our revenue sources are, even though we know a lot of these numbers are pie in the sky. But right now, we know that there's gonna be an increase in the ambulance fee, and we know that the real estate transfer tax is a pie in the sky assumption if it passes or not. So I think for all of us, to see some in truth in budgeting, if we can see at least page 13 updated with those two changes.
Mayor? I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was on the committee that voted to allow the increase in the ambulance charge. We're increasing that charge to the insurance provider. If the insurance provider won't pay that charge, we are not passing that on to our citizens. So I agree that there will be some type of an increase, and I know the number that Jim gave out was correct, except there's some major cutbacks in the benefits being provided by the insurance industry under the Affordable Care Act. So I'm not quite sure, but the idea was we shouldn't be leaving any money on the table. So, the number he has in here may be a fairly realistic on the low side. We'd hope to generate some more revenue, Jim, but not quite sure if that's going to happen.
Well, my only concern is if you look at the current budget, we budgeted 5,011,000, and then in 2016, with the increase, we've budgeted about 500,000 or 600,000 less.
Good call.
So we're actually going down in what we're budgeting in revenue when we've increased the actual fee. So I think, and if you're saying you're thinking there's a $700,000 increase, I think that needs to be in here. But again, the other thing is the real estate property tax transfer. I think that fee should come out of here, the $1.1 million or $1.2 million, whatever it is.
Mayor?
Yes.
I think it's disingenuous to the public if we don't include that expectation that they would approve that revenue, because it says that we don't really need it. We can continue to use our fund balance to put $1.1 million in there, and I think the message that has to be sent to the public that this is really needed to help balance our budget and deal with the issue once the referendum outcome is known, as well as the state budget is known, and we've got some experience on the revenues from the ambulance fees.
I agree. And I think it's right to be conservative in our estimates and not be pie in the sky, Councilman McFarland saying. But we also, there's a big unknown with the state. We really have no idea what's coming down. So any budget is going to be iffy right now without knowing what's going to happen in Springfield, in my opinion.
Mayor?
Yes.
I have a question and a comment. First question is, are we going to be voting on this budget line item or as a whole? Because there are some folks that have expressed certain items that they would be against, and I think if we vote as a budget as a whole, we run the risk of them voting against the entire budget. Are we going to be doing it line item or as a whole?
Well, hopefully at our public hearing, and right after the public hearing, you would vote on the entire budget. I would rather have you vote today on specific areas if you want to change the funding, because we're required by law in our posting to get as close as possible in terms of accuracy of what the expectation is you're going to adopt in a week.
Jim, is it possible at that public hearing that we vote on the budget as a whole? If the budget vote fails, then we do it line item to see if we could still adopt the budget without specific items?
Yes, it is.
That would be my recommendation, that we vote on it as a whole, and if it doesn't pass, then we dig deeper.
Okay. And my comment was, earlier, Councilman McFarland and City Manager Jim Hawk went back and forth for about 3 or 4 minutes about which fund the money was coming out of, and it really wasn't money coming out of here, it was coming out of there. Always remember, every penny we spend up here is a penny we took from them.
Certainly.
We aren't a company. We're not putting out widgets. Every penny we spend is a penny we're taking from other residents. Always remember that up here.
I agree.
Dr. Quinn, just as a practical matter, I've never seen a budget voted on by line item. There must be 1,000 line items. I mean, how would you do that?
Very good question.
Okay.
I think, and I don't
Okay.
think we're gonna get there, but if we did, then we would identify the areas of controversy.
So maybe
That's
just
right.
identify those half
Those
dozen line
areas,
items that,
yes.
Yes.
that you want to.
And we can adjust the line items that would
Okay.
be appropriate for that adjustment.
I defer to you,
That
you've been
makes
here a long
sense,
time.
that makes sense. I mean, I think,
Yeah.
I mean, there's no secret, the obvious controversial items is the closing of Station 3, Rialto funding, outsourcing legal. I don't know if there's another one or not, but those are the ones that come to mind right away. And
Some
I
of the
agree.
revenue.
Pardon me?
Some of the revenue as far as the.
Some of the
ambulance.
revenues, right.
Museum.
And so, so I think that's probably the best way to do it, is if the budget fails, then do those 4 or 5 or 6 items separately, and then package it together. But I just want to make one comment on the levy. And I totally support capturing the increase in assessed valuation. I think that's a very smart thing to do. For some years, it wasn't done. It was bought down with riverboat gaming money, and you never recapture that. But I think that, to be clear, everybody needs to understand, if their assessed valuation goes up or the assessed valuation goes up of the entire city, they could be looking at some more dollars, not extreme amount, but some more dollars being paid to the city through their real estate taxes. That's what we're doing with capturing that amount. So, I mean, we'll be getting calls saying, hey, you said there was no tax increase, but mine went up $50. You know, that could happen if your assessed valuation goes up, just to make it clear.
So if your value of your house goes up, to clarify,
Correct.
you could see a little bump.
Mayor,
Just to be clear, I'm sorry, just to be clear, Mr. Hawk, you're freezing the rate. The
That's-
property tax
that's
rate
right.
is frozen.
Yes.
Thank you.
Mayor?
Yes.
I just want to be clear. It's the referendum. If the budget does pass and we get to that point where we decide we don't need that transfer tax increase, will we still be able not to put it on the ballot? Or will it, once we vote for the budget, if it does pass? I just was trying to get clear on that, Jim.
Well, actually, on tomorrow night's agenda is a motion to put that on the ballot as a referendum question.
So that's not, won't be part of the budget.
Well,
I mean, the money is.
Yes, right,
But
the
not
money
the-
is.
putting it on the referendum we'll vote on tomorrow night.
That's right, yeah.
Any other questions, comments?
Mayor.
Yes.
Just so, we had a request, everybody got the same email, just to address a constituent's concern or suggestion. She suggested that maybe a 2-cent per gallon gas tax be put on. And I asked Mr. Hawk if he would look into it, and it's my understanding that we missed the deadline if we were even going to, I hate to even say the word tax, but I talked to the mayor about it, possibly a temporary tax since gas prices were so low. But according to the state, we missed the deadline on that to do such a thing. Is that correct, Mr. Hawk?
I'm not sure, maybe.
Well, there's a
Lee-
paragraph here that says, we've been informed by the municipal league that payment vouchers for tax, video gaming fees, and casino fees have to be submitted by the Department of Revenue to the comptroller by December 11th. Payment vouchers for 911 fees, and it goes
Well,
on.
I'm sorry. That has to do with the fact that Public Act was adopted at the state level, signed by the governor, to distribute the gaming taxes to the city.
Oh,
So
okay, 'cause
that
that's
has-
all under the gas privilege thing.
No, I'm sorry, right
Okay.
above that.
I
And
see it. So
the co-
anyway,
Yes.
what I was gonna say, did we ever find out if we were to do that or even consider it as a temporary and I was talking to the mayor earlier today, with gas prices so low right now, 2 cents a gallon, you know, it would be spread out through the entire city. It would be with the truckers, people that come through, that stop for gas. It wouldn't just be put on the taxpayers. Did you happen to figure out how much that would generate in revenue? And then when the gas prices go up, we would rescind that tax. And that would be for sure. I would never vote for it unless it was understood that when the gas prices went up, then we rescind it.
Yes, a 1 cent increase per gallon would raise $450,000 to $540,000.
Is that for a year or
Yes,
for a whole year?
yes, it is. And the difficulty in doing that is that gasoline is very tight commodity in terms of competition across the street. There are always gas wars going on, and so they're always very close. And we've heard before from the gas station owners that it's so tight that they only make their money off of the sales inside the gas station, not necessarily the gas. That being said, though, it is a mechanism to increase revenues.
So I know we don't want to raise taxes. It was just a thought, but I didn't want this constituent to think we totally ignored her thought process or request.
Thank you.
Mayor,
Yes.
quick question. Some of us may or may not have received the email. Could you please publicly tell us if the budget's approved and passed and there are layoffs, what happens with those employees? Are there severance packages? What's our protocol on that?
I'm sorry, with
With personnel. So before us, if the budget's adopted and we outsource, for instance, a legal department, what happens? Do we give them a 30-day severance, 40 days? I mean, how does that work?
Well, that's subject to negotiations and something I'd want to discuss confidentially with you.
There's no standard policy.
No, there isn't. We're taking a look at what we've done historically.
Okay.
That's ridiculous.
Mayor, I've got a request for closed session. Doesn't have to be tonight, could be tomorrow night, whatever council's pleasure is.
Rather do it tonight? I would too. We can do it tonight to vote on it.
Okay, we do need public comments first.
Yes.
Is there anyone that would like to speak under public comments?
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. Steve Randich, 3026 Jeffrey Drive, lifelong resident of Joliet. Mayor, I thought I heard tonight something that I think really we need to talk about, which is the Rialto in terms of some sort of funding source. I agree with you. I also agree that, Councilman Hug has the right, and he's been elected to certainly give his opinion. I do think, however, his conduct in terms of what you would do to address anyone really needs to be questioned. The Rialtos obviously had a series of problems over time. Their biggest problem is to try to find a source of revenue that can be consistent. And I think that, obviously Councilman Hug's not a big supporter, and he certainly has a right to that. But I hope that the rest of the City Council understands the importance of the Rialto to downtown. I'd also say that the original intent when the Rialto was going to close and Dorothy Maverich came along, it was the city and the state that came along that decided this was something that needed to be done. And I hope you'd keep that into consideration as you move forward. There's no question the city has some struggles with their budgets and we need to do some things. But not funding the Rialto, having them do less shows, Larry thinks that we're going to, get 600,000 less, and it's not going to affect things. It really is. There's other things there, though, the buildings and some of the other amenities that the Rialto has that no other really civic center has. We really need to address those as well. We need to collectively talk. But I think we need to start with, this is really something that is very unique to our city. It certainly needs to stay here, and we need to figure out collectively how to do it. And I think we need to do it in a constructive, not a destructive sort of way. So I appreciate what you have to do in front of you. I appreciate the fact that you've got some challenges. I'm a taxpayer, I've been here for 58 years. I don't plan on going anywhere. But I think collectively we can work this together. So thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else that would like to speak?
Good evening, John McQueen. Good evening, Council, Mayor. Last week I spoke to you and asked the question how this is going to work out. Two possible answers. And I said you would probably pass the budget. And that's what it looks like is going to happen. So I'm not surprised. But there was a lot of conversation between you, that would say we're going to take a sharp pencil on this. Let's take a look at some of the assumptions. We used the word capture. Capture the money that we're losing. Whose money is that? When you go and buy some gasoline, and it's 50 cents cheaper than last year, should you pay 25% more just so you capture that money for the gas station or for the taxing body? No, it's called a savings. And where is the savings if you'd always get captured? My house value goes down, but my taxes go up. That's not a savings, that's not a capturing money, that's kind of unfair. Some sort of a class in understanding this, if there's a savings, it means a savings in what you spend. We have some fundamental assumptions I'd like to question, Mayor and others, on this inspector. What I read in the paper was very disturbing, and who he reports to or she reports to. That sounds like a really strange position. Why don't we have, since you're going to probably pass the budget tomorrow night, why don't we have some rules with that? We're not going to institute anything new until we solve some problems. Is the state going to pay the money? Let's see what happens. If you have the money at the end of this in 3 months, is that going to make that much of a difference? No. Are you going to ever deal with the intermodal site? People are going to other areas to catch the train because they don't want to deal with it down here. That's not gone away, folks. We haven't talked about it for a while, but since last year, we've been talking about that, and it's still there. We have a lot of basic assumptions in how we fund the budget. I've heard words like zero accountability, zero-based budgeting. And no offense to anybody, but how does a $6 million savings of a $10 million increase qualify as a savings? That's still a $4 million increase. Does every department get the same amount of money? No. We talked about 1%, 3% deduction. That was questioned as being sequestering. What about just a simple number, 1% out of that budget in that department that spends $52 million, you can't find 1% somewhere? I think there's a lot of fundamental questions in how you look at things. We need to go back to a budget that you have to prove things. We just don't approve it because it's nice. That's not right. That's not right. And you have a history of being hardworking, and I don't question your sincerity and your effort. This is a very difficult process. But let's have a moratorium on starting anything new until the tax referendum does pass, if it does. And we're not going to do that until we know what, and the accountability of these people. What is this person going to do? Are they going to be a face of the community? We can hire all kinds of faces, but are they going to be accountable? Will they bring in this much money? Or they bring in no money? Will that still be reason to keep them on? So I would like to suggest you put some qualifiers in your budget proposal and not just rubber stamp another increase. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Seeing none, is there a motion to go into closed session to discuss personnel, collective bargaining, land acquisition or conveyance, pending or threatened litigation, after which the meeting will be adjourned?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and seconded. Councilwoman Gavin.
Aye.
Councilman Girl.
Aye.
Councilman Hug.
Aye.
Councilman McFarland.
Aye.
Councilman Morris.
Aye.
Councilman Mudron.
Aye.
Councilwoman Coleman.
Aye.
Councilman Turk.
Aye.
Motion carries.